Hey everybody, in this tutorial we're going to talk about spinning your wheels. I'm going to talk about how to rotate tires basically in two different ways. The first way is using perform motions. We're going to create our own perform motion, and this knowledge can be applied to any other prop out there as well, so you can create your own animations for any props and embed them in the prop. And in the second part we'll deal with rotating your tires with physics and constraints. So if that's too complicated for you, you can skip the last part and just pay attention to this first part if you're looking for the simple fix. What we're using is a vehicle from our iCar body shop pack. You can find this in the content store. I'm going to go to my scene manager and give you a little bit of a run through of what this consists of here. We have this high chassis, everything's connected to that, and we have all these separate wheels. So if I select these separate wheels, we can move them separately. I'll just Control Z that, and this monster truck is actually the top part of the body right here. And so everything is just connected to this chassis, which is the bottom, foundation of our monster truck. So the first and easiest way to rotate a tire is very simple. Let's go ahead and select our front left tire right here. And the easiest way to do this is I'm going to press F3, go into the timeline, and we can maybe move this down a tiny bit so we can see a little bit better. And all I'm going to do is at regular intervals, 25 frames per interval, I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. So I'm going to go to frame 25 in my current frame right here, and with my object selected or my wheel selected, I'm going to press the E hotkey and rotate it forward. And you can see my x-axis over here changes value. I'm going to change this to 90 right here, and then we're going to go to frame 50, and the next step up would be 180, and then over here I'm going to go to 75, and I'm going to enter in 270. And in frame 100, I'm going to enter in 360. So that goes back to 0. We have a full revolution of our tire, and if I spin it around, you can see there is our full revolution right there. Pretty cool. So, we could copy and paste all these keyframes, so on and so forth, along the timeline, but the easiest way to do this, to animate this, is to actually create a perform motion, and we can save that to our prop. Now the way we do that is just click and drag in the collect clip track here. So I'm going to click and drag and right click and select add to perform. And this is going to add this perform motion to our prop, so we can apply this anytime we want simply by right clicking it. So I'll just call this, we'll just call it spin. There we go. Press OK. And so now that's saved as a perform motion in our tire. What we can do now is we can actually right click on our tire and remove object animation, and that'll remove all of the animation that we just added. Let's close down this project track here then, and I want to open up this time the animation track, and this is going to be where our perform motion will apply. So let's go to frame 1 here, right click on our tire and select perform, and now we have this spin. Don't worry about these other ones. These are just, they came embedded with the iCar, so we won't use these in this tutorial. Let's just select spin. And you can see my tire will spin. And it's the exact same animation that I created earlier. But I can just move this track a little bit over to make it to the beginning. And if I press space, there is our spin right there. Perfectly fine spin. So really that's all you have to do to spin your tire. Now if we wanted to translate that to all the other tires, we'd have to do that same procedure for all the other tires. But because we're lazy, we can actually do it a different way. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and you can actually use our speed option here in the clip for the clip, and we can change the speed and we can make it faster or shorter. So let's bring it up to 50, and now you can see our wheel will rotate a lot faster. So if we wanted a faster rotation, we can do that, or a slower rotation, we can stretch it out a little bit more. It'll just rotate a lot slower. I'm going to bring it up to about, let's go to 100. There we go. Just back where it was before. And we're going to just go ahead and copy this prop, this tire prop, to the rest of the tires. Now, if you want to save this tire, what you can do is go to your Content tab, go to Props, go to Custom, and Custom Props, you can save it as, press the plus button down here and go call it Tire with Spin, very practical naming convention there. Tire with spin, and then you can reapply it to anywhere you want. So what I'm going to do though in this case is I'm just going to hold the press the W hotkey first for the movement gizmo. I'm going to hold the Control key. I'm going to click and drag and make an additional copy. Now this additional copy will be named L front wheel with a 0 in parentheses, and it'll contain the exact same animation. So if I play it back, you can see they're both animating, just like that. So the animation was preserved when I control copied it. So let's take our left rear wheel here, just delete that, and then take this one here, and we can just move it to the relative position, or we can actually just go ahead and Control-Z that a couple times. We can actually use the Align tool here, Align to, or Control-L, and we can align it to the left back wheel, and X, Y, and Z, and to the center. Make sure it's centered exactly where the previous one was, and then we can just go ahead and delete the left back tire original one, and then we can call this one, this is the new L underscore, whoops, there we go, back underscore tire, right there. And then what we have is we have the two wheels just like this, and they both remain attached to the body. So if I go here, down here, you can see it's now attached to the left front wheel dummy. What we can do is we can actually change this. The left front wheel dummy, you'll see where it is in just a sec. We can go in here to the ... area, and you can see now we can look at all the different bone structure of this original prop. So we can change it from left front wheel to left back wheel dummy right here, and just press OK. And if you want to see what all that's about, you can select your object right here and just go into your animation and edit animation layer, and you can see if we twirl this down, you can see we have our truck chassis, left front wheel dummy. This one becomes yellow. If you take a really close look at it, the bone is really super small, but it becomes yellow. And then left back wheel dummy is the one over here, and so on and so forth. Just so you know kind of what we're getting at with the hierarchy of the bones here. So then if we wanted to, move this forward, all we have to do is press play, and I think we're at frame 100 is where we stopped. Let's go to frame 100, just enter it in down there. We can press the W hotkey and move ourselves up here, and to any position really. And you can adjust this later on if you want. There you go. So there's our truck movement right there. And you can reapply that as many times as you want. You can loop that motion if I want. So if I press F3, go into my timeline, select my left front wheel. Again, I can change the speed, or I can also loop it as well. You can use the loop and just loop-de-loop like that, and then it will go like this. And this one will continue spinning. And then we can, of course, change the position. So that's basically it for adding something to your perform menu. Now you can do that with any prop. You can animate the prop in any way, click and drag in the collect clip track, and then save that for later use. And you can also save it in your content manager here as well. So if I brought this one out again, I still have that option to right click, perform, and spin. And you can see that's the same tire, same animation right there. So that's pretty cool. You can save those animations and everything like that. Let's just go ahead now though, and I'm going to remove all the animation from my tires. So select my left front tire, right click, remove animation, and the left back tire. I should have called it back wheel, I guess. Remove animation, there we go. And we need to remove the motion from our truck as well. So we'll right click that, remove object animation. Now what we're going to do, again, if you that's all you need, you can stop watching here. But if you're interested in a little bit of physics and how to make a more realistic tire, follow along. So now we can actually add in some physics to our tires. And I'm going to focus on this left rear wheel. You can copy this same procedure to all the other wheels later on. But I'm going to take the left back tire right here. And what we're going to do is we want to make this a physics enabled tire. So let's go ahead into our physics tab up here and activate physics. Now we want to activate this as a dynamic body, because dynamic will fall like this, natural physics reaction. Okay, don't worry about that. We're going to constrain it in just a sec. And also notice that it has this red bounding box around it. Let's go ahead and select the bounding type up here. Change from bounding type of box to convex hull in this case will work. That'll wrap around and keep a fairly simple physics result right there. So now we have this bounding box that's correct. We need to add a constraint. So let's go ahead and add a constraint. Select add constraint on the bottom, and we need to constrain this. So normally a wheel will operate with a hinge constraint. You can go around in one way the wheels won't be able to wobble around. You don't want wobbly wheels. So let's just use our basic hinge constraint. I'm going to click and drag this hinge over to here. And we have other tutorials on constraints that go into more detail if you're interested. And let's go ahead and just align this hinge. You can see this hinge now attaches to the back tire. I'm going to make sure it's aligned properly. So I'm going to go align to again, select the back tire, and X, Y, and Z. We'll align it to the center right there, and press OK. So this, we can actually move it out a little bit so you can see it. That's our hinge constraint. It's just a dummy that we can see, and that's constraining our tire. So now what happens, if I press play, it will no longer fall, even though it's a dynamic object, because this hinge constraint is constraining it into place. And let's go down here to the rotation. So currently we have a limit on how much it can rotate. Because it's a tire, there's no limit on how much it can rotate. It's going to go in for infinite rotations. So let's just go here to select free rotation right here. If you press play, nothing's going to happen because we don't have any initial force. Now to activate an initial force on your hinge constraint, you can just go down here to force and activate. Now let's change to a velocity of something like 5 and press enter. And then if we press play, you can see, woo, we have that pretty cool constraint right there. It's moving our tire along. Now, if I decided to move my truck along at this point right here, take a look at what will happen. So let's go to frame 100, and move my tire or my truck ahead. The tire will remain in place because it's a dynamic object now. It's no longer going to follow the truck. It's a dynamic physics object, so it'll just fall in place no matter what it's attached to, and it'll constrain to this section because of that hinge constraint. So what we need to do is add a couple more dummies here. And the next dummy that I want to add, I'm just going to go to the Content tab here into my props, template props right here, 3D blocks. You could use any 3D block for this. I'm just choosing to add a ball or a sphere. And we're just going to take this ball or this sphere, and we can press the R hotkey to resize it a little bit. And let's try and get it reasonably in the center. This doesn't really matter exactly in the center of our little axis there. And that looks about fine. Okay, so we have this dummy now. We can actually rename it. Let's call this axle dummy. There we go. And I'm going to attach this to the chassis as well. So let's go over here and choose, where is our attach? There we go. Attach to, pick parent, and we'll attach it to our chassis right there. Okay, so this is attached to the chassis, but we also want to make this a dynamic object as well. So let's go to physics and activate physics and dynamic. Now, I'm going to show you why in a sec, but let's go ahead and just change, keep it at dynamic. We don't have to worry about the bounding blocks in this sphere. If I press play now, that'll just fall down. So what I want to do now is actually attach this hinge. We're going to take this hinge right here, and we're going to pick a target. The target is basically what it's attached to. So let's go ahead and pick target, and I'm going to pick that sphere right there. And now you can see the target is the axle dummy. The parent, or what it's constraining, is the tire. So if I press play now, it'll fall along with that, which is really what we don't want. But what I can do is add yet another constraint onto this little axle here, or the axle dummy, I guess. So let's go ahead with the axle dummy selected. I'll make sure we have it selected here. There we go, yep. And let's go to physics and add constraint. And this time we're going to add a spring, because this is going to be basically our shocks. It's going to act as like kind of our shocks for our truck here. So let's click and drag this spring, and you can see the blue line there indicates the direction that it's going. We don't have to get this exact at this point, but let's go ahead and zoom in really closely, and now you can see this spring constraint right there. It doesn't really matter where it is, but we do have to make sure the rotation is at 0, and I think 0 on the y-axis. Nope. We want 90, or negative 90, I think, on the y-axis. So it's straight up and down like that. And then we also want to make it sure it's 0 on the z. So this is going straight up and down. We can move it to the center. We can actually even align it to the sphere. X, Y, and it doesn't have to be z, just X and Y. There we go. So now it's in the exact center right there. So now this is constrained, this sphere is constrained by this spring. And let's go ahead and take a look at what that does. So if we have the spring selected, we can go down here. We have these values here that we can modify, the limits. So the spring amount is 150. That's like basically how springy it is. And the movement range is along the x-axis here, and that is at 100. So let's go ahead and press play and see what happens. You can see it'll fall basically 100 units. And that's our spring. It's not very springy. If we want to change our spring value to like 600 or something like that, you can see it'll just kind of act a bit more springy like that. And let's change this to maybe something like 250. Nothing too extreme. And you can see we get a little bit more bounce. So this is going to come in handy because we're going to run over a couple of speed bumps here. But first we need to make sure that our axle dummy is actually attached to the chassis, or the actual truck here. As you can remember, it's a dynamic object, so that's not really possible at this point. But what we're going to do is we're going to add a different type of physics constraint now. Let's go to Content, bring in another ball. We can just use this ball and align this. This time I'm going to align it to the chassis. So I'm going to select Align To, and High Chassis, X, Y, and Z. We can move it up there, that's fine. It doesn't really matter where it is. And press OK. And this one we'll call this Truck Dummy. We're going to just call it Body Dummy, actually. That's a bit more accurate. So this is Body Dummy. And we're going to make sure this is attached to the chassis. Again, I believe we need to pick the parent. There we go. Okay, so you have this Body Dummy right here. And then what I want to do is go to Physics, activate Physics for this Body Dummy, but I'm going to choose a different type of physics quality, and that's the kinematic one. Kinematic basically allows you to animate your object. So if I have this ball, I can animate it as much as I want, and it'll still retain a physics value, only it's kinematic. And kinematic essentially means that you can assign a physics value, so stuff will bounce off it, but it's your animation, it's your movement that's controlling where it goes. Things will bounce off it still, and you can check out the help files for a lot more detail on that. We're not going to spend too much time explaining that. Hopefully it was clear enough. But this allows us to actually, this sphere will now go along with the truck, even though it's a physics property or a physics prop. So that's useful for us because we need to attach this constraint, or this spring rather. This spring, we need to make sure that the target for the spring is that dummy. So now if I select Pick Target, and I select Body Dummy over here, oops, we go spring, there we go. We have to actually physically select it. So let's take our Body Dummy out here for a sec so we can actually see it. And spring, and pick target, and I'm going to pick that Body Dummy right there. Now, that is the target of our spring constraint. So that's going to allow this, basically wherever this Body Dummy goes, that's where the spring constraint is going to follow. So I can move this, anywhere into my truck. It really doesn't matter where it is because it's actually still attached to the truck. So now we have this option to, go along like that, and our truck is moving. So we have that initial force right there. We don't have to have the initial force. If you have, a ground that has friction on it, you can actually create that naturally. But let's just go ahead, and I'm going to select my chassis here. Press F3, and let's go ahead to frame a different frame here, maybe frame 300 or frame 250 or something like that. And let's just delete this keyframe first. Let's go to frame 250, and I'm going to change the position of this chassis to something a little bit further along. Let's move it to something like that. Hopefully that's not too fast. Let's go ahead and take a look. There you go. Looks okay. Of course, we can change the springiness of that wheel there, but I like the kind of monster truck spring it has right now. So let's create a couple barriers for this tire to run over. To do that, we can just go to Content. We can let's choose maybe 3D blocks. Let's choose an arc. Arcs make good speed bumps. Something like this will do. There we go. Arc 03. We'll just move it in there, and we need to rotate it a little bit. Let's rotate it, I think 90 degrees or so. Make sure the value is exactly 270 on the z-axis there, or 90 would be okay. And let's just press the R hotkey and stretch her out like this. So there's your speed bump. Pretty easy to create speed bumps. And I'm going to just go ahead and press the R hotkey and maybe scale it down a bit, something like that. And let's create a couple of these. So press the W hotkey. Oh, first I want to assign physics to it. So let's go ahead with physics, activate physics. Let's call it static. So static will not move no matter what. And you can see the bounding box is kind of a cube or a rectangle. So let's go ahead and change this, the bounding box to convex hull. That'll work fine for our intents and purposes in this tutorial. And then we'll select it, Control, click and drag, Control, click and drag. All right, 3 speed bumps is enough. This is a really tricky parking lot with a lot of speed bumps. Let's go ahead and press play. So you can see now our wheel will bounce over those speed bumps and kind of continue on bouncing like that. So that's really how you can create a more realistic wheel. If you actually want to use, physics, if you have some barriers in your way, you can bounce over stuff like that. And that's pretty much it. Again, you can go into your spring constraint and you can change the values of the spring constraint if you want. If you want it to, have less of a range, if we want to have a bit of a tighter shock, we can change the range to something like 10. I'm not sure what this will look like, but there you go. It's obviously a lot less bouncy than before. So you can change the range, maybe the spring value to something like 20. So this will be like a really stiff kind of shock right there, something like that. And of course you can change the range to even something even smaller as well. But that's your basic monster truck tire. Those are 2 different ways that you can rotate tires. Again, I had a couple of requests for people wondering about this, and I thought it was pretty simple, so we can do a quick tutorial on it. So those are 2 ways you can rotate tires and move your car along, whether or not you want physics or not, if you want a quick fix, or the more complicated physics method with constraints. So again, thanks for watching, everyone. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time.